This is the last of 4 different types of competition, looking at oligopolies today, which is where we have a few major players dominating the market, but it doesn't mean that there aren't some small, insignificant players as well. So if I could ask you to read the case study on oligopolies and breakfast cereals, it will give you a lot of insight as to the characteristics, and then please rejoin the PowerPoint once you've finished. So let's look at some characteristics, some major characteristics of an oligopoly. So one, there's what we call a high market concentration ratio, where we have a few dominant firms that control a lot of the market, although there can still be some small firms with little or no market power. So many years ago, just as an example, when people used to go out to get VHS tapes to watch movies rather than streaming, we had 2 major players, Rogers and Blockbusters, but it didn't mean that we didn't also have small mom and pop corner stores selling tapes directly or through vending machines. So there were some small players, but they did not have market power and they did not control the market. The products can be identical or differentiated. There's interdependency between firms, and the IB and the new syllabus really focuses on this interdependency between firms. And then just a reminder, the IB also focuses on, again, the new syllabus on market failure and to what extent it exists with these different kinds of competition. And there's substantial barriers to entry. So the number of firms, as I said, a small number of large firms dominate the market. Doesn't mean that we can't have some small players as well. Each firm has a significant fraction of the market. I'm talking about the dominant firms. Barriers to entry are large. They could be technical, legal, copyright. It could be because of high startup costs, like the aircraft industry, product differentiation, advertising, control of natural resources, and so on. Products can be homogeneous, such as oil, steel, cement, or differentiated, pharmaceuticals, the breakfast cereals that you just looked at, cigarettes, and so on. Market power, we have economies of scale, which encourages market concentration. And here we go, there's that the IB emphasis on mutual interdependence. So the decisions made by one firm affect other firms in the industry, and you'll see an example of that coming up in this presentation. So strategic behavior, this is important, is based on plans of action that take into account rivals' possible courses of action. So it's similar to playing a card game or chess, where each player's actions are based upon the expected actions and reactions of its rivals. Under oligopoly, firms planning their strategies make great efforts to guess the actions and reactions of their rivals in order to formulate their own strategy. So you heard me refer to concentration ratio. So here we have, for instance, going from left to right, first of all, before I get into concentration ratios, we have perfect competition, monopolistic oligopoly, and monopoly, where it's getting more and more concentrated in terms of how many firms control the market. And we refer to it as CR4 ratio. So what it means is that the top, the largest 4 firms, how much of the market do they control? So in an oligopoly, it could be 50%. Moving towards a monopoly, they may control 80%. And in a monopoly, if it's a pure monopoly and it's only one firm controlling the market, it's 100%. So in class, we're going to do an activity called the prisoner's dilemma. If you are learning remotely, I'll let you pause and read this, but this is an activity that we do in class. We'll have a numerical example from a past IB exam presented that we'll go through together. And then we have the partners state whether they stay silent or betray and look at the results. So the prisoner's dilemma has applications to economics and business. So let's say we're dealing with Coca-Cola and Pepsi selling very similar products. So I'll let you read this on your own. But again, each one has to decide on a pricing strategy. Are they going to undercut the other? Are they going to charge the same amount? Um, what are the strategies that they're going to employ? So I'll let you read this, pause, and then come back. And again, we'll look at this with a concrete example. Okay, so following up this prisoner's dilemma. So this was an IB question, and students were presented with this table. So we have firm A and firm B. Now assume that the market in which firm A operates has evolved into an oligopoly with only two firms, firm A and firm B. Each firm can cut price or maintain the current price. The following payoff matrix shows the profits they face. The profit payoffs for firm A are in bold. Okay, so I can't go back and forth when I'm recording, but you'll be able to go back and forth to look at this table. So pretending that you're either firm A or firm B, and you question what they may do, what would be your best position to take? Okay, so let's get into this. So if firm A thinks firm B will maintain price, then what strategy should firm A make? So you can look at the payoff matrix, and the answer would be that they're going to cut price because at least their 24 million is greater than the 18 million if they made the other choice. So there's the matrix again for your reference. Let's look at if firm A thinks firm B now will cut price. Then firm A will. So what would be their dominant strategy? Well, their dominant strategy again will be to cut price because at least their 8 million will be greater than 3 million. So the matrix again, looking now from the perspective of firm B, trying to guess what firm A might do. If firm B thinks that firm A will maintain price, then firm B will cut price because 24 million is better than the alternative, which would have been 18 million. If firm B thinks firm A will cut price, then firm B will cut price because 8 million is greater than and better than 3 million. So the dominant strategy is, in each case, to cut the price. So looking at oligopolies some more. There is the incentive to collude. So firms under oligopoly face incentives that conflict or clash with each other. So we'll look at the first one, the incentive to collude. So remember, there's only a few dominant firms, so they can get together and decide to either fix the price or reduce the quantity or a combination of the two. Illegal in many countries. And then often their firms are brought into court to see if they have colluded, which is not legal. But if we're looking at something like OPEC, the oil producing exporting countries, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and so on, well, they have a cartel, they collude. And so you may say, well, but that's illegal. Well, while we're in Canada or if you're in the States, you can't really be telling other countries what to do because it's out of your jurisdiction. Okay, so the incentive to collude. The term collusion refers to an agreement between firms to limit competition between them. Firms in oligopoly are especially concerned to limit price competition between them as much as possible. By colluding, firms reduce uncertainties resulting from not knowing how rivals will behave and maximize profit for the industry as a whole. Collusion can involve an agreement to divide the market between the firms in some specific way, such as according to market shares, or to limit quantity to be produced by the industry as a whole and therefore fix the price. The result involves limiting competition and increasing industry profits. So there you have it on one hand. On the other hand, you might have the incentive to compete. At the same time, each oligopolistic firm also faces an incentive to compete with its rivals in the hope that in this way it will capture at least a portion of its rivals' market share and profits, thereby increasing its own profit at the expense of other firms. So a formal collusion, cartels, and the IB does want you to be familiar with when there is a cartel and there is a collusive oligopoly. So let me make that clear that it is also part of your new syllabus. A cartel is a formal agreement between firms or countries, in the case of OPEC, in an industry to undertake concerted effort actions to limit competition. The agreement may involve limiting and fixing the quantity to be produced by each, such as setting production quotas, fixing the price at which output could be sold, setting restrictions on non-price competition, such as advertising, dividing the market according to geographical or other factors, or agreeing to set up barriers to entry. Whatever the case, the objective is to increase the monopoly power of the firms within the industry. So it's important to realize this last paragraph is key. In effect, when the firms in an industry collude, so they agree to limit competition between them, they're collectively behaving like one firm because they've all agreed to how they're going to behave. So they're behaving like a monopoly, and the graphs are the same for monopoly. So I'm not going to be drawing that here because I feel that we've practiced that enough, but I'll be showing you a graph. So this is the case of oligopolists acting as a monopoly. And so again, you're going to produce where MC equals MR, which is here. You're going to go up to the average revenue curve to determine the price. At that quantity, you'll go over to average cost to determine all of your costs, and the difference is the abnormal profit. So please be aware that you are now seeing this graph for a third time. You saw it in monopolies. You saw it in the short run monopolistic competition where they had abnormal profits in the short run, but they did disappear in the long run. And now you're seeing it as a collusive oligopoly. The best known example, as I said, is OPEC. They periodically try to raise the world price of oil by cutting back on its total output, where each country is given an assigned output or quota. That quota has nothing to do with international trade here. It's just an amount that they're allowed to produce that is permitted to produce. The restricted quantity of oil results in a higher price. Obstacles for forming and maintaining cartels, though. There could be cost differences between firms. So each firm would ideally like to produce where MC equals MR, but if you've agreed on the quantity, that may not be at that spot. Firms face different demand curves. So again, it could be difficult to make an agreement on something such as price. The greater the number of firms, the more difficult it is to achieve consensus and compromise. There is the possibility of cheating. With OPEC, I read years ago in the Globe and Mail, they actually gave a little chart of what the quotas were for each individual country of what they were supposed to be producing in oil. And it was also showing what they actually produced in oil, which meant that pretty well all the countries were cheating and producing beyond what their given sort of quota was. The possibility that someone might break ranks and have a price war. In a recession, there could be the incentive to lower the price, but you might have agreed to a higher price. Potential entry into the industry, thereby breaking up the cartel or posing the threat of a competing firm or firms. The industry lacks a dominant firm. If that's the case, the dominant firm can take on a leadership position regarding output and price, and legal barriers. And as I said, cartels are illegal in many countries. A non-collusive oligopoly, the kink demand curve. Now, I'll be quite honest here, but we'll keep it brief, and there'll be some slides where I'll say we're going too far into detail. The new syllabus for the IB does not have you do the kink demand curve, yet at the same time, it's talking about showing how firms are interdependent in an oligopoly. So quite frankly, I can't see teaching this properly without looking at a non-collusive oligopoly and looking at their particular demand curve. It's not that complicated, but it's known as the kink demand curve. So it's a model that's been developed to explain price inflexibility of oligopolistic firms that do not collude and is illustrated on the next slide. In this firms do not make formal or informal agreements with each other on how to fix or coordinate prices. Instead, their pricing behavior is strongly influenced by their expectations of how rival firms will react if they undertake a price change. And so it's for this reason, this latter reason here, if the IB wants you to be able to explain sort of the interdependency of firms in an oligopoly, I really feel like you need to see and understand the kink demand curve, but we won't go too far in depth. There'll be some slides I'll say to ignore. Okay, so the non-collusive oligopoly. So what it looks like is this is relatively elastic to this point and then becomes steeper. So this is demand, which equals average revenue. And at here is the market price. Now, what happens is that they watch each other very, very carefully. If one firm raises its price, the other firms say, okay, you go ahead, you do that. We're not going to follow suit, and we're going to pick up your customers. So when we look at this kink demand curve for one firm, their demand curve becomes quite elastic because they lose a lot of customers because none of the other oligopolies are also raising their price. So if the firm raises its price beyond the market price, and so PED here, so PED is elastic, and I'll just do this verbally. So they've raised their price, but they've lost a lot of customers. So quantity demanded has gone down proportionately more than the increase in price. So total revenue is going to go down. However, if they decrease their price, it becomes quite steep here. So PED is inelastic. And so what happens if they lower their prices that the other firms say, ha, you're not going to get our customers, you're not going to take our customers away, we're going to lower our price as well. And so you don't end up picking up a lot of extra customers. So with PED being inelastic, you drop the price, but you pick up proportionately fewer extra customers, because remember, law of demand, price and quantity demanded move in opposite directions. And so if you're lowering your price, but you're not really making a great difference in quantity demanded, then total revenue will go down. So what we've looked at in the past is that firms therefore tend to compete not on price, but on other features, because if they change the price from their market price, total revenue goes down, and here total revenue goes down. But this also emphasizes why they're interdependent and they watch each other's pricing policies really carefully, and they try to anticipate what is going to happen in the market and how their behavior or the other firm's behavior, pardon me, will impact their total revenue. So a lot of interdependency. Okay, so if we look at how gas stations use non-price competition, just think of where you may go typically to fill up your vehicle. And so there's things like sometimes they have fast food outlets such as Tim Hortons. They might have promotions on items such as snack food, pop and chips, could be oh window washer fluid, antifreeze, and so on. But I don't know about you, I've never gone into a gas station and they say, hey, we're having a sale on gas. No, they'll have a sale on something else, but not their own product. And I think the kink demand curve helps to explain why, because they may risk that their total revenue goes down if they increase or decrease their price, depending on what the competition is doing. They might have car washes, loyalty reward programs, a speed pass or fobs for paying to make it convenient, special gas like a Shell, I think, has a special gas for very cold weather, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we're not going to do this. So this is going too far in depth. It's taking the kink demand curve, I think, farther than you need. We're not going to do this. And we're going to ignore this, okay? I think it's enough if you know the essence of the kink demand curve. So oligopolistic firms often have considerable financial resources due to their larger profits that they can devote to both research and development and advertising. The development of new products provide firms with a competitive edge, and they increase their monopoly power. And consumers often appreciate the new products, especially if they're, I would assume, if they're going to be new, they'll be improved. So this is also meets sort of some consumer needs. Product differentiation can increase a firm's profit position without creating risks for immediate retaliation by rivals, because it takes time and resources for rival firms to develop new competitive products. So this is a past IB question. Why does an oligopoly engage in non-price competition? Um, I don't know if you would see a question like that with the new syllabus. I think it's going to focus more on, is there market failure? Is what are the limitations? What are the benefits of an oligopoly? And then maybe comparing and contrasting an oligopoly that colludes versus one that does not. And remember, a colluding oligopoly behaves as one firm, so you're dealing with a monopoly diagram. Criticisms of oligopolies, very similar to those for monopolies. We don't have productive or allocative efficiency. So again, that ties into the IB syllabus looking at market failure. So yes, we've got market failure. We may have higher prices are charged and lower quantities of output are produced than under competitive conditions. There may be higher production costs due to lack of competitive pressures. Firms may be less technologically innovative because there's less competition. They contribute to more unequal distribution of income. In addition, so this is a special thing, it may be argued that oligopolies may be an even less socially desirable market structure than a monopoly, because whereas we know that there's antitrust or anti-monopoly legislation in many countries that protects against the abuse of monopoly power, the difficulties of detecting and proving collusion, so in other words, the difficulties of proving that they're operating like a monopoly, means that, so it can be very, very difficult, means that such firms may actually behave like monopolies by colluding and yet may get away with it. Benefits, though. Economies of scale can be achieved due to the large size of oligopolistic firms, leading to lower production costs to the benefit of society and consumer, so they may end up actually charging lower prices. Product development and technological innovations can be pursued due to the larger economic or supernormal profits from which research funds can be drawn. The benefit of oligopoly is more important than in the case of monopoly, since non-price competition forces firms to be innovative in order to increase their market share and profits, so rather than competing on price. Technological innovations that improve efficiency and lower costs of production may be passed to consumers in the form of lower prices. Over and above the benefits of oligopoly that are similar to monopoly, oligopoly also offers the following advantage. So the product development leads to increased product variety, thus providing consumers with greater choice, whereas a monopoly does not offer product differentiation and variety. You don't need to do this assignment, but just showing you what a past IB question has been. And thank you. Bye-bye.